Welcome to Network Capital, Arunima. Really happy to see you. It's been a while. How are you?
I know it's been a while. I'm super excited to just like see you again. And it's been a while, but just happy to reconnect and just come to Network Capital. I've been the biggest fan for like a very, very long time.
Well, thank you so much. You've had such an interesting career, um, a non-traditional background, doing hardcore tech work. So tell us your story, a brief overview of your career, and how did you decide to pivot your career?
Sure. I think I have what they call a tech a squiggly career. So it's
Hmm.
not a very well-defined path, so as to say, and it's more like you shape your path as you go by. And I think I was just very lucky to be at the right time at the right moment. So when I was working at Disney Star, I worked on the first VOD launch of the country, which was Hotstar.
Hmm.
So, and I worked with leaders who went on to like really shape Meta in India and then Snap in India. And now I think the overall media landscape in India with Gayatri being the group CMO. And I directly used to work with them. So my learning just accelerated very fastly, just in terms of understanding how do you work with C level, how do you look at the business, how do you dial back, and
Hmm.
what do you do to make your output from a work perspective very meaningful. And
But
I
let's take a step back because a lot of our listeners are not from the tech industry or not from India. So you're a literature major, and then you did liberal arts at Ashoka, where we met. Um, Give us a snapshot. Like you were headed for a particular kind of career when you decide you wanted to be into tech, and then perhaps some of these details will make more sense. Yeah.
I thank you so much for that pivot. I think I really needed it, and now looking back, very very happy to like just give more context to the group. So, 100%, I started my career with literature. I was always drawn to the world of stories. Utkarsh, I know we had some fascinating interactions over those at
Mm,
Oshoka when we were classmates, and that pretty much led to my career in insights in media with the biggest broadcaster in the country, which was Star back then. And it was a role which was like a mix of consumer insights and strategy. And at the same time, Star was being acquired by Disney, and the whole tech stack of Star was also kind of taking shape under Hotstar. So
mm,
that was the first VOD player in the country, or OTT as it's now being largely referred by. So I worked really from like zero is to one in terms of like really launching Hotstar in India, understanding the entire GTM plan, working
mm,
with leadership on really understanding what does this app really stand for in the life of a user.
mm,
What are the different user personas that you can talk about? What kind of content people should be watching? So really like the whole gamut of it, from content landscape, from strategy perspective to marketing perspective. I did a fair bit of all of it for like 24 months, and I think it was a lot of learning at a very accelerated rate. And when I wrapped up that experience and I started looking at roles within tech, I saw that they were looking for people who could speak from a media landscape, but were also eager to learn how tech looks like. So, having a very growth mindset while also getting some of that media thinking, because LinkedIn was looking to also expand into storytelling
mm,
when I joined the enterprise business in India. So they were looking to grow enterprise sales in India, and they were looking for someone who had a knack for data-led storytelling. So I was
mm,
doing a little bit of like GTM strat ops, and also a little bit of sales in my role. And then I did that for 2 years, and then I came across this role at Spotify, and I love
How did you come across that role?
someone knew at LinkedIn reached out because they had worked with me, and I think you build your reputation through work. So we used to work very closely, and they said that Spotify is going through this like tremendous growth phase, and we are like doubling our users almost every 2 years in India.
Mm.
And this is the time to be at Spotify. And it sounded very interesting. So I started talking to the group at Spotify and I started like an
So
exploration.
you reached out, you sort of sent an email to the
Yeah,
hiring
like,
manager.
yeah, the hiring manager. And we just like started talking. And then I discovered that this is not just an India role, this is more like a JPAC role,
Hmm.
which basically means that I work beyond just India. So I also look at Australia, I look at certain SEA markets, and I basically look at a little bit of consumer insights, but honestly, a lot about how do advertisers believe more and more in Spotify. What kind of evidence or proof points do we show them that working with Spotify makes a lot of business sense, and hence you should be spending on Spotify. That's typically what I do at Spotify, to just like sum it up in a sentence.
Hmm.
And it's the biggest bet at Spotify. JPAC continues to be like one of the most developing yet chaotic, complex markets, as you can imagine. And I think even in the last 2 3 years that I have been at Spotify and LinkedIn, I have seen the industry change so much. And like in terms of how the market is growing, in terms of what people want from the app, in terms of how do you really identify growth levers for the market, for example. All of that is seeing a lot of shift because culturally in India is also shifting. It's a lot of nations under one nation.
Hmm.
So a lot of my work really goes into mapping what do we take to the most premium version of India, which is very, very relevant to advertisers like, say, a Samsung, a Unilever, a Google. And I typically work with Spotify and Google leadership to identify areas of overlap where we can collaborate.
How come Google? It.
Well, Google is one of our biggest tech advertisers. So every single launch that they do, whether it's a Pixel, whether it's Google Pay, whether it's Android, they always do a lot of campaigns.
Hmm.
And Google is a very effectiveness driven brand. So they want solid proof of concept every single time that they work with us. So
Hmm.
every single time we have substantial investments in terms of different campaigns from Google, we
Hmm.
sort of dial it back and we think of how do we take an advertising effectiveness narrative to Google. What are the different levers that we can prong, and what how do we really show that Spotify as a platform is delivering long-term growth, is delivering long-term value for them. So these are the different kinds of clients that I work with. And as you can imagine, it's pretty fascinating because I work with them not just in India, but pretty much across JPAC. So I get to meet a lot of their stakeholders across, and it's a very good synergy of ideas. It's a very good synergy of just understanding where the market is headed, also
Hmm.
co-producing a lot of first of its market kind of analysis. So we did this entire inventory analysis with Google where we looked at things like incremental reach and how do you partner with Spotify and how much in media terminology, reach, frequency, these are very important drivers, and how we give incremental reach as compared to other publishers. So we do a lot of industry first when we work with advertisers like Google, just to give you an answer.
And clearly, like Spotify stock has done incredibly well since you joined. So congrats for that. Um, But you've worked at a lot of leading tech companies. What advice do you have for people who are coming from, say, liberal arts or literature background, um, to break into tech? Because you clearly can bring in a bunch of skills. So, what are those skills? How did you break in? What's your advice to people?
I think the more I think about it, I think the market, the way it was, say, 5 or 10 years from now, has drastically changed in India. The kind of demand of roles is also as such that need skills from a liberal arts background. So you no longer just need someone who's very good with numbers. You also need someone who can tell stories via numbers. So it's not like you're just looking at a lot of number crunching, but you're looking at data led storytelling. And I think where people from liberal arts really do have an advantage is, I think, in terms of being very, very curious and in terms of really looking at the bigger picture, and in terms of bringing different kinds of perspective together and
Mm,
looking to a common thread that weaves all of these things and putting a larger story to the leadership. And the leadership really looks for these kind of stories, because I think when you're typically trained as a, say, in maths or as an engineer, you tend to only look at numbers in a certain way. But I think where people from liberal arts really have over indexed is that they have multiplicity of disciplines. You have some bit of sociology, you have some bit of economics. So when you're looking at a business problem, you're looking at it from like different lenses, and that kind
mm,
of holistic understanding is, I think, really appreciated in tech right now. And it goes beyond just roles like sales strat or GTM or marketing science, even in terms of product, the features that we are building out, how is
mm.
this relevant to a user? I think when I think about someone from liberal arts, I think there's so much more attuned to the market as compared to someone who has had a very academic training, say, which is very heavy in numbers or which is very analytical, and they can't really think about how would a user respond to this particular feature or would respond to this particular song if we release, or this is the kind of space that Spotify should be owning. So I really do feel that the ability to really lead with story and the ability to really see insights in different discrete data sets is something that liberal arts students really over index on as compared to other disciplines. And that's the flavor of the market right now.
And then one experience paves the way for the other. So sometimes getting that first or second shot is really helpful.
Yeah.
You mentioned marketing science. That's not a term that I hear very often in tech companies, but perhaps it's a Spotify specific thing, or maybe not. Like, just help us understand what it is and
Yeah,
uh, what does one do? What do you do at Spotify daily?
sure. Like, and just to answer your, go back to your previous question, there's an important nuance that just occurred to me and that I just wanted to like touch upon, is that when you look at a tech firm like LinkedIn, for example, I have seen people spend like 7 to 10 years in different teams. So it's
Hmm,
like you learn and you then see, you develop an understanding of that particular vertical and what you want, but you also see a role that's very relevant to you. And I think
right.
that's really encouraged because that cross pollination of ideas that happens, and because you also work cross functionally at places like LinkedIn or Spotify or even like Google.
Hmm,
So I think people really have, and I think these places also welcome their talent to really apply to different roles within the larger company, and they love someone from within the company also wanting to pivot. So for example, if someone has only done sales and would want to pivot to a sales strat role or want to pivot to like a GTM role, that's very open. So
hmm,
it's for our student from liberal arts, I think having a foot in the door is more important. And then
right.
really let your experiences guide you. You can also choose something that's closer to what you want in time, and the role really evolves as your perspective evolves. So I think that's these companies are very open to things like that.
Yeah, that's so refreshing to hear because honestly, that's not the perspective that's in the market. If you look at many of the roles that are advertised, they're almost intimidating with the number of things that they want
And
qualifications in, the kind of skills. But perhaps there is a way out of it. And from your approach, it can start with a network, then go on to data-driven storytelling, something that was very interesting and we should discuss more. And then like keep going down and see how you can add value. So super helpful. Now let's go to marketing science and Spotify.
yeah. So marketing science is a discipline that's like consumer insights plus plus and like product marketing plus plus sales. So these are the different kind of teams that we closely partner with. Typically, marketing science supports both product marketing and the advertising business at Spotify. So we closely work with product marketing in terms of understanding what are the product rollouts that we're doing in the market. And then we work with sales. Like I mentioned, we work very closely with different advertisers. And once we work with these advertisers, we help them understand how does Spotify really work powerfully for them. So we take a lot of thought leadership, narratives to the market in terms of very strategic, edgy positioning for Spotify. Like, for example, we did this thought leadership piece on how ads on Spotify are viewed in a very high attentive state across both audio and video.
Hmm.
And when we take these kind of narratives to like a Meta, even Meta is an advertiser for us. So they find that very compelling. And then they come back, okay, this is how we would like to work with you. How do we partner with you? Can you build a roadmap for us, like in terms of how does success look like for Meta? And then we look back from an advertising effectiveness perspective that these are the different kinds of solutions we could enable for you. And this is how, once your campaign gets over, this is a different kind of reporting that you could see. So that's one way that marketing science works. The other way that marketing science works is we partner with product on different advertiser solution rollouts. So, for example, you would have heard that um, advertisers do a lot of brand lift studies. So how many different kind of brand lift studies could you do? How do you make it very, very meaningful? And how do you just move beyond the traditional approach? If an advertiser is, say, interested in understanding a sales lift, which is typically after advertising on Spotify, how many SKUs did I sell? So we also design studies like that. It's largely about using a lot of consumer insights to basically show advertiser success. And marketing science as a role is at Netflix, it's at Meta, it's at Google, it's at Facebook, it's at Instagram. So it's a FANG role
Hmm.
in, it's a role that's embedded in tech companies, and it's largely supporting the advertiser business because we really help scale a lot of free subscription revenue by showing solid proof of concept or solid proof of work that advertising is working for you. We were able to move the brand metrics, so we were able to get you XX conversions, XX leads, etc.
Hmm.
That's work that we do.
So, like Spotify advertisements for most people would mean like advertisements within the podcast. But are there other real estate within Spotify that are used? And how come Google is a partner of Spotify? Shouldn't Google be competing for the same dollars?
So very, very interesting questions, and I'll take all of those like one by one. 100%. So podcast is one of the biggest inventories that we have. We also have a lot of listenership on podcast across the board. Like when I think Spotify and podcast are synonymous with each other. So
Hmm.
every single time an advertiser thinks about advertising dollars on podcast or listening to that kind of a user, they always invariably end up thinking about Spotify. Now, Spotify also has different types of user tiers.
Hmm.
There is a premium user tier which has no ads. So every single time you are on a premium version of the app, you absolutely listen to no ads. But the minute you switch to a free tier of the app,
Hmm.
you are exposed to 2 ads per hour, and you get that in both audio and video ads. So you're being served both types of ad. So when we work with Google as an advertiser, we work with Google as the client because they do see value on being active on Spotify, because
What is C value? What does
the
C
kind
value
of
mean?
the kind of audiences that we provide in terms of having access to Gen Z, in terms of having that
Okay.
kind of attentive state, or in terms of really having access to India One, we do have a lot of USPs. So that makes it very, very promising. And I think the second part of it is really that you know Spotify also competes with Google in terms of an advertising ecosystem. So it's like Spotify plus Meta plus YouTube plus Google search, all of that. But I don't think that Spotify by itself occupies a dominant position in the market. So we have conducted multiple different kinds of syndicated researches where we've seen that we become very powerful the minute an advertiser is active on both YouTube plus Spotify or an Instagram plus Spotify. And we are typically used for like brand awareness kind of campaigns. So the kind of clients that we work with is insane. We work with CPG clients, we work with finance clients, we work with tech clients, but all of them typically use Spotify along with a dominant publisher, which is typically YouTube and Meta across the world. That's the kind of positioning that we have. And advertising is all happening on the free tier of the app. So the premium tier is absolutely ad free.
Right. Um, so if a podcast was I network capital, so this podcast will go on Spotify and other places. We our business model is subscription enabled, not ads. But very occasionally, when we have a partnership, we do ads. But I don't think Spotify can stop me from running an ad. So when you say ad free, it just means that Spotify real estate will be
Yeah,
free. Is that
yeah,
correct?
that's correct. And even in podcast, even for like some premium users, we do showcase some ads here and there because we do feel that these are longer sessions, so you could have like an ad break in between. So we do that.
Right. Yeah. That's fascinating. So, give us a bit of an overview of the industry. You had mentioned earlier that India is changing, the industry is changing. Media is personally one industry which am fascinated by, and network capital, in a way, is an education and media company blended into one. So, like, as somebody who's an expert, like, where do you think this change is stemming from?
I think there are two big drivers of this change. And if I have to like look back, like do a look back analysis, it all started when Geo really disrupted the market. Suddenly, data which was
Which one?
very,
Sorry.
Geo,
Oh,
the
Geo. Yes. Yeah.
so for those of you who don't know what Geo is, it's a telecom provider, which basically had the cheapest data packages for India. And India as a market was used to really exceptionally high costs of internet and suddenly had this availability of internet even in tier two, tier three towns, which was very, very unheard of. Even in cities where people used to save data or say WhatsApp calling was not the norm. Everything changed within like a period of like 2 to 3 years.
Mm,
And with internet being enabled so much, the demand for content also grew. So there was a lot of demand for content consumption. So suddenly you saw that from having one or two apps like the really premium ones, like think of Netflix, think of Hotstar, you suddenly have an influx of OTT apps in the country. So there are so many different OTT apps where people are just consuming content, watching different kind of shows, etc., which is great. But I think in terms of just digital media consumption, that's also shifted a lot. So TV is slowly on the decline in India. So all the advertising dollars that used to go on TV has now been taken up by digital. And now digital is the place for all advertisers to be relevant. And the more money that these platforms consume, the more market needs grow. That means more and more consumption or content is also available for listeners and viewers on this platform. So we still have a duopoly in the market with Google and Meta being the two big giants. So there's Instagram, and then there's Reels, and that's competing with Shorts and UGC content on YouTube, which is the two dominant players in the ecosystem. And then you have smaller players like Snap, you have Spotify, you have what I would call the OTTs, because these are also very important from an advertiser perspective. This is largely how the ecosystem looks like.
mm,
Now, um, the other change that has also happened is that the GDP in India has also grown up quite substantially in the last
mm,
couple of years. If you see phone ownership and premium phone ownership in India, that's also significantly gone higher. In fact, in comparison to developed economies, the growth of smartphone ownership in India, especially in terms of premium handset ownership, has been much, much healthier. And what that means is that every single time people are on the phone, they're also constantly consuming content
mm.
because you are, you don't even realize you are like scrolling through reels. Suddenly you are being exposed to stuff on YouTube, and you're also like scrolling through LinkedIn, and even LinkedIn is like just not a job searching app now. It's evolved as a social, like a serious social media app, right?
Mm,
So I think just premiumization of the market along with really cheap data availability has led to this kind of disruption where consumption is really on the rise. And I feel that the market is saturated with in terms of the publishers that are already operating. So I don't see any new publisher coming in the market. But obviously, what the lesser powerful players are trying to do is to poach away Meta and Google's share in the market. So it's going to be a war of Google plus Meta versus, say, a Snap plus Spotify plus LinkedIn, and
Mm,
it's going to evolve very fastly. So I think just from like a product perspective or from a ad solution perspective, a lot of disruption is going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, and the market share also occupied by each would fundamentally also change. And I'm only talking about the advertising share of it because that's primarily what I have, you know, a view of over the last 5 6 years. I think in terms of subscriptions, not much is going to change because that fundamentally would move by 5 or 10%, but not more. But if you look at
mm,
the advertising part of the business, that's where a lot of growth and a lot that's very fast moving as compared to the of premium subscription model of all these apps, because India also is a very cost sensitive market. You don't see people being willing to pay a lot for different kinds of apps at one go and wanting different premium uh, userships of all different apps. So even in a family you will see that the Netflix ad account is being shared by multiple people. That's not going to change. But if you
mm.
talk about advertising, that's also drastically shifting even on Netflix as a platform on the free tier.
Do you want to tell us a bit about how India listens or how India consumes? Because this is a fascinating question that many people are trying to figure out. And to help you address this answer, maybe you have some insights on how different age groups listen, how different genders listen, what platforms do people use, what kind of content are they consuming? Just like an overview might be helpful.
Yeah, I think you know, India is seeing a lot of growth of regional content, and this is like one of those emerging trends coming out from the country. And that has Spotify has had a huge role to play in that because we do a lot of identification of upcoming artists, and then we basically have these artist-led events in different metros, and they over a period of time develop into fandoms. So if you think about Hanuman Kind,
Mm.
that artist has been discovered on,
The rapper, you mean? Is that okay? Yeah.
he was identified by Spotify India.
Oh.
Uh, yeah, and then his shows were also, just they got a lot of momentum when he came and he activated his a lot of his shows via Rap 90 Fun, which is our artist partnership. And obviously, he has grown into a phenomenon by himself. Very similar for also Anuv Jain. He was also identified on Spotify. Same goes for Pratik Kuhar. So in terms of generational shifts, now this is a very interesting question that you ask. I think Gen Zs look at Spotify as a place of self-discovery and self-identity. And
Why? Why
uh,
is that the case?
I think it's also to do with the kind of content that we provide. Like if you fundamentally think about music, it's so much, and I know that your brother is a musician.
Hmm.
So I
Which is
know
why I'm asking you. And
relationship with music is so intimate as opposed to just watching a show. It's
hmm,
something you grow up with. Like whether you go through a breakup or you need a focus time or you are doing some household chore and you're away from your country and you're studying outside. What is your constant companion? It's typically music. It's songs that you have grown up with listening in your home country. There's a sense of nostalgia, something new that you've heard your new classmates listening. So there's a sense of discovery that Gen Zs typically associate with Spotify. And we conducted a series of ethnographic studies in India. And one of the biggest findings from that study was that on Spotify, Gen Z curates, and on social media, Gen Z curates, but on Spotify, they reveal who they are. The kind of songs that you listen to, the kind of playlists that you make, or the playlists that you share with your friends. There's also this concept of blend ships, which is typically finding people on all these dating apps, and you typically want to understand what your taste is like, or if you like someone, you want to like build a playlist with them just to know how your compatibility or tastes are evolving. So we
Mm,
see that Gen Zs have a very intimate relationship with um, the app. And when it comes to millennials, we see that it's almost like a fair split of music and podcasts. So they listen to both music and podcasts, almost 50-50, which is a big eye opener. Not almost 50-50, but I think the podcast listenership over the last couple of years for millennials has really drastically gone up. They're obviously listening to a lot of music, but they're also listening to a fair share of podcast. And I think the genre variety of millennials is quite a lot as compared to other age groups. So typically you would see that they're very interested in topics like finance, in topics like self-improvement, and even in listening to a lot of when we initially launched Spotify and when we were looking at the listening patterns, we were seeing a lot of US songs or UK songs, or like really the top 40 songs being consumed. But right now when we look at the top songs being consumed by millennials, it's more of regional music. So a sense of self, like being happy from where you belong, a sense of rootedness is very very core to millennial audiences, both male and female, on Spotify. So we don't see any inherent differences in how music is being consumed. What would also shock you is that people spend about 2 hours daily on Spotify.
wow. That is in India. Is that
Yeah.
the case?
In
Okay, wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
And this is like we've looked at Comscore data. We've also run our first party targeting, audience insights analysis, etc. And we see that when people really come on Spotify, they stay on Spotify. And you could be doing different things through the listening session. So, for example, you're getting ready, going to work, you're commuting, but your earphones are popped in, and the kind of relationship that people have with the app is also pretty interesting, because we do like a moments analysis, and people say that Spotify makes this moment so much more relevant for me, like whether it's parenting, whether it's
Mm.
commuting, whether it's doing household chores. So I think mostly driven by millennials and Gen Z's, we don't see a lot of differences between male and female audiences. But what is really interesting to see is that while millennials see it as a place of belonging, Gen Z sees Spotify as a place of discovery and self identity. So those are the kind of
Fascinating. Fascinating. And in terms of India has been a target for many tech companies. One challenge that we hear about India is monetization, because we have a lot of people, a lot of young people, but people say that the ability to make money through the ads or other channels is limited. Would you agree, or has India proven many skeptics wrong?
Look, I think first of all, Utkarsh, you're asking me all the tough questions. And taking away all the secrets. So I think it's a very dynamic market. It's also one of the tougher markets to crack for sure. I think in terms of subscription growth, I think what people are inherently looking for is value.
Mm,
So if I talk about the premium subscription on Spotify, even that has doubled itself in the last 6 years in India. And
mm.
we came to India in 2019. And from 2019 to 2025, we've already doubled our share of our subscription base in India. And you can imagine, um, from a business sense, it makes so much sense to keep investing. It's all about the kind of content availability to audiences. It's all about the kind of value that you bring. Your subscription growth is bound to take an uptake. I think what also is important to understand that you cannot overly saturate the free tier of an app with like multiple different ads, because that leads to a lot of fatigue, and ultimately you see a lot of people losing the app. So we do a lot of social listening, social chatter crawls, and we see that, and we take user feedback or app ratings very very seriously. And this is a recurrent theme that comes up in apps which see a lot of degrowth in terms of subscribers actually losing out, shifting from one app to the other. So you can't overload the ad load, which is a common mistake that a lot of publishers make, which is like putting multiple thousand ads in like one hour or 2 hours. You've been exposed to 10 or 12 apps, and that's just going to drain you. That's not the kind of experience anyone is looking for. I think what we've also done is that we only put 2 ads per hour on Spotify.
Mm.
So if I just talk about our free users, we already have crossed 100 million users in India. We are beyond that, and we started from very low numbers when we started in 2019. So it's almost been like 6 to 7 times growth. So you can just imagine that there's a lot of there's still a lot of headroom for growth for Spotify in India. So I don't think that that's a challenge. What is really difficult is that also growing from 0 to 1, but also growing from 1 is to 10. Like, how do you really tackle that? What kind of strategy do you take? What kind of product features do you keep rolling out to audiences who are on free tiers that they have an incentive to stay on the app? And also, how do you put a very interesting content library? So we also do a lot of playlist discoveries for Gen Zs. We roll out a lot of songs from our side. We also bring new artists on the app. We also do a lot of IRL events. Now, despite all of that, monetization still is, I would not say is not a struggle. It's still a struggle because India continues to be, and I think will be, a very, very value conscious economy, and people will also choose where they pay. So at a household level, you won't expect every single person to be on the subscription tier of the app. And for many, many different apps, they would only choose the apps that they want to home screen, or that they want or they see value in. So ultimately, it comes down to where do people see most value. And if you really distill it down, what does that really mean to? It's all about the kind of content that you have on your app. What is the kind of user experience that you have on your app? So if I just talk about YouTube Music or YouTube Premium, that has not seen the kind of growth that Spotify has seen. And it's purely on the back of the kind of content and the kind of music, the kind of playlists that are, and the ease of navigation that's available on our platform as compared to a dominant platform like a YouTube. But if you look at Meta, it's a completely different game. I think Meta
Mm.
is really growing a lot. Um, and even their free tier is like exploding. But it's largely on the back of growth in non-premium markets. So they are not growing in markets which are very India one. They are growing more in tier two and tier three cities. Now, while the growth is great, it also does pose a challenge, right? Because from an advertiser perspective, you are not in a market where the most creme de la creme audiences live, and that's the kind of uh, audiences any advertiser wants to go after. So I think um, monetization is a challenge. Different ads are tackling it in different ways. They're also catering to different versions of India. So while YouTube Premium, YouTube, and Spotify continue to be very, very India one, very, very metro, very, very premium in nature, you will see other publishers like a Meta being very focused on tier two, tier three audiences as well, because that's where a lot of their advertising is coming from. But it's not going to grow exponentially because those are limited advertising dollars as well.
Very interesting. So, seems like the company is tackling an important market in a smart way, and you're clearly doing incredibly well. Um, do you see yourself in tech? Do you make big career plans, or what does career planning mean to you overall? And I ask this mostly for advice for people who might want to listen and say, "Hey, how does one go about it?"
Yeah, I definitely see my career embedded in tech. And I just love being in tech because that gives you the kind of like nothing gives you the kind of scale that tech gives you. So, for example, I always wanted to be in a place which was an amalgamation of some level of data, but also some level of storytelling. And the minute you layer that with tech, you have
Mm.
something so much which has the kind of scale that a traditional broadcast medium would never have. right?
Mm.
So I see my, as long as I work, and I have loved working in tech because I love collaborating with different teams. I don't like just being very siloed or just working in only marketing science, but I look at my career, like I mentioned at the start, in a very squiggly way. So I work very closely with managers. I work also very closely with different client partners and people who are typically out in the market pitching at Spotify advertising as a solution. So um, I love tech. I'm not going anywhere from tech. And I also love this because there's so much still to learn. There's I think it's like an iceberg. I've only seen 1/10 of the surface. There's so much more changes that are going to come. There's so much more growth that's going to come in India. So I definitely see myself growing within this space only.
Just a couple of more before we begin to wrap up. Um, you said numbers and storytelling. As somebody who's not trained in engineering or math or something of that sort, uh, how did you pick up? What are the skills do you actually need on the job? Is your job very number heavy? And what advice do you have for people who are interested in this role but perhaps didn't go through formal training in the subject?
That's a great question because I did not get formal training in maths. I, in fact, even in my higher secondary, had already started studying biology, which meant that I was not studying maths. But once I started working in consumer insights, I was doing a lot of number crunching. So I was actually doing a lot of on the job training. And it had to be quicker because I could not be in a place where I was learning and while my peers were already doing these analyses. So, what really made it very helpful for me is that before we actually started working, we were also having 6 to 9 months of very, very rigorous training where we had it was almost like a management training program that a lot of companies in India used to have. So we had a lot of training in statistics, a lot of number crunching that pretty much set the tone. But what really finessed it was like doing it daily and
Mm,
learning to do the hard parts as well. There's no easy way out. If you really want to grow and you really want to be in that ecosystem, you have to get comfortable with the discomfort. And the faster you do it, the better it is. Because while liberal arts folks are very good at storytelling, once you fuse the power of numbers in it, your findings also become so much more concrete. They carry so much more weight when you go into a room and your arguments are led by data. They are embedded in data. They have so much more meaning and value. So that
mm,
was definitely something that I learned on the job. But I don't think that not having a formal training is a blocker for anyone. I think more than ever, there's an opportunity for every single person who joins a tech company to learn while you're working. Um,
mm,
at LinkedIn, we also used to have a lot of these programs, and employees were very, very actively encouraged to basically sign up for these programs. And these were in collaborations with Columbia, with Kellogg, with Harvard's of the world, as aspirational as you think that these could be. And if
mm,
you had a passion area, or you identified that this is a place of learning and I want to really double down on this, the company supported you in ways more than one. And I know that even Google and Meta have similar programs, and even at Spotify these things are encouraged. So I do, as long as you have the appetite and as long as you want to grow, there's no stopping. But I definitely feel that when you start working, a very important part of your role is about being acquainted with numbers, and you have to be a lifelong learner. So for example, right now I'm learning a lot about AI because I just see it being a huge disruptor in how we have fundamentally and traditionally approached work. So I think there's always going to be a component of learning, and even for senior folks, you have to keep upskilling as you also grow in your career. It can be different things at different points in your career, but there's always has to be an element of learning and growth in your career path.
I was actually just coming to AI to wrap up. Do you think now that AI can make music, right, it is likely to change the way people listen and consume, or have you seen any changes at Spotify or other things?
It's it's such a great question that you asked me, because we also do a lot of audio production, like in terms of if there's an advertiser and they're like, hey, we don't know how to produce an audio asset. So Spotify also produces a lot of audio assets. And now, to make it simple for an advertiser, we have an end-to-end AI led capability. So you could tell
Mm,
AI that this is the kind of ad I'm going after, this is the kind of music I would want, this is the kind of tonality I would want. I would want a male or a female voiceover. And Utkarsh, I kid you not, you would be amazed by the kind of output it would produce for you. So I
mm,
definitely feel that we, and even when it comes to AI, and even in workplaces, it's one way of how we work. But the other way is also about just looking at analysis that used to take 2 or 3 days. You can do it in like 2 or 3 hours. You just need to know the right tools. You just need to know the right prompts, and you can unleash so much more quickly. And I'm a big believer of harnessing that um, going forward. So I am very actively upskilling in that area, um, because I do see organizations really, and especially tech organizations, embracing AI. Back at LinkedIn, we were a part of Microsoft, so we also saw how Microsoft was not just embracing AI, but also making it very meaningful for everyday work. So something that would take you uh, like an hour could be done in 10 minutes. It could be automated so quickly. So when something is such a big
mm.
enabler for productivity, why would you not embrace it?
Mm.
So yeah,
Fascinating. What a remarkable discussion on Spotify and careers, liberal arts to tech. Thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap up, is there any message or anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I don't think so, because you asked me all the difficult questions. I had not thought about all of these things so much before I stepped in, because I had made a deck on how someone should build a career out in insights and stuff. And I'm so glad we spoke about this, because it definitely feels like this is where a lot of the
We
workforce.
should do that as a follow-up, that deck you made.
We could do that.
Yeah,
But I think we covered a lot, and I just had such a great time just speaking with you and just like catching up. It really felt special. So thanks for that.
I treasure your time. Thank you so much. Look forward to catching up in person. Bye.
Bye.